Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste. I'm Steve Bosch, your host for 60 minutes of delicious radio and TV. This is TV, right? I think. Yes, Fairfield Media Center is presenting Great Taste here live at Green Building Supply. And we always do it every first Tuesday of the month, right? So this is the first Tuesday of April, and we are here, and we're glad that you're here with us. And right with me is Christi Welsh. Christi's going to help cook.
Bake.
Bake.
I'm
That's
baking.
Right. You're baking. That's right. And I'm cooking. Mm-hmm. Right? And thankfully, somebody was reminding me earlier that my clarified butter was burning. So I'm going to stir this right now before we have any more issues at this moment. Anyway, I want to thank, first of all, right off at the top before I forget later on, Everybody's Whole Foods for providing all the wonderful ingredients for this monthly repast, and also Green Building Supply for hosting, and Riley for helping us, make everything run smoothly, and Jason Strong from Fairfield Media Center, who produces this amazing, show. All right. So we've got a lot of things going on, so you'll forgive us if we might seem a little bit disorganized, but let's see how we do, and maybe we can hold it all together. But the theme behind this show was, I just got back from 3 weeks in Florida, and I really am not appreciating the weather because it's still really cold and nasty. So we decided to rush spring a little bit, because in Florida, when I was there, they had organic Florida strawberries. It was like, oh my gosh. And so we're going to just pretend that it's spring and maybe even a little bit of summer, and we're going to just have fun and try to keep warm while we're inside, so it should work out just fine. Anyway, Christi's going to bake strawberry shortcake, and we're going to have fresh strawberries, obviously, with that. And I whipped up this afternoon some wild rice burgers, so we're going to have those, and I'm making caramelized onions right now that will go with those burgers, and we'll do a quick aioli that we won't make it from scratch, and we're also going to have some quick pickles, some quick red onion pickles. So we've got all kinds of little things happening. So I'm going to get a little bit of focus on this, and why don't you tell everybody what you're going to be doing as far as the strawberry shortcake is concerned?
Well, when I make strawberry shortcake, I make baking powder biscuits and whipped cream and strawberries. It's very simple, very basic, yet delicious.
And you know what's interesting is that I think most people don't really understand that strawberry shortcake is really biscuits. Yeah. It's not like angel food cake. I don't know the history behind all that stuff, but I'd much rather have biscuits than angel food cake. So we're doing it the right way. Strawberry shortcake. It's going to be good. Hi. Go ahead.
So to start with, I've already pre-measured. I'm doubling this recipe because I wasn't sure how many people were coming tonight. So I have 3 cups of flour in here, and we're going to add 4 cups. That's all it takes. And it's very simple, very easy. I have baking powder, butter, and this is sea salt, milk, and flour. That's all that goes into my biscuit recipe. So I also wanted to make sure, I don't know if you guys all know this, but when you are measuring flour, you should always lift up your scoop and let it drop into your measuring cup instead of sticking your measuring cup in and digging around, because it makes you get more flour that way, and so you're actually getting more than a cup. That way, when people do that, you can have like dry cakes, or it's just better to lift up. So I wanted to show that to you for my last cup.
Now the thing is that in this kind of recipe, most of the time, do you weigh?
I always do. I don't weigh because I have never learned to do that with the European way.
Yeah, most I think with baking, if you're just starting out with baking, I think it's really better to just make sure you weigh everything, weigh all your ingredients. You don't have to, obviously. She's a great baker, and she doesn't. But I think if you're just starting out, it's a really good thing to learn that way. And almost any recipe book is going to have both the weights and the volume measures. So.
Yeah, well, especially the European recipes, they're always in weights. So I always take the flat part of my knife to scrape. This is what I learned in middle school cooking. To scrape off the top of my flour to make sure I have an even cup. And then this is my bamboo sifter that I use to sift my flour. So I'm going to do that. It might take a while.
And you sift the flour because?
You want to get all the lumps out and to aerate the flour.
Now, we're going to have to cheat a little bit in a sense because the strawberries are not. Did you taste them before? You started. Were they a little? Did they have a little sourness to them, or were they all right?
The couple that I had didn't.
They weren't bad. Okay. Sometimes this time of year you're going to get some sour. I loved it. I'm not even going to mention this store, but I was in Florida, as I said, and I went up to the produce guy and I said, "What's sweet right now?" And he said, "Berries." And I had already tasted the blueberries. They were so sour. It was terrible. And I said, "Oh." And he said, "Yeah, the blueberries are really sweet." And I'm like, "Okay." So I moved on quickly from that point. But one of the things about Sarasota, where we go for several weeks in the winter, is that they have this farmers market. They have several farmers markets actually, but the one you would be amazed. How many of you actually get around to other farmers markets other than the Fairfield Farmers Market? How many people? Okay. Do you find a lot of organic produce at those farmers markets? Well, I'm not going to talk about. Let's forget about like the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market in San Francisco, or something like that. But I mean other towns, small towns, or things like that. I think that in general you won't find a ton of organic vendors at those places. And in Sarasota, at the Philippi Farmers Market, there's one. And at the downtown farmers market, there's two. And there's really only one because there's only one that has a lot of stuff. So it's quite extraordinary. Everything's conventional except for. But the Wooten Farm has, I hope I said that right, Warden Farm, I think is, hold on. Let me look at my bag.
While he's looking for that, I'm going to.
Warden Farm.
So I've sifted all the flour and I added the baking powder and the salt to my dry ingredients. Now I'm going to stick in my stick of butter and use my, I never say the right word. What is this?
Pastry cutter?
Pastry cutter. I always called it a pastry fork.
I like pastry fork, actually. I like that a lot.
So this is going to cut the butter in to the flour, and you do that until you have coarse crumbs.
These are like really good basic implements to have in your baking kitchen if you're doing, some baking, to have that kind of thing. So anyway, Warden Farm is a fantastic supplier of organic produce in that southwest Florida area. And the thing that's so fascinating about them is that it's a husband and wife, and they're both PhDs. He's a PhD in, I think, agronomy, and her PhD is in some other field that is related to the land. So, and they're both just working their tails off, and they have this huge farm stand every Saturday in two different markets. And so that's where we go to enjoy all the fresh produce and eat really well when we're down there. So it was such a pleasure to have that opportunity, and so that's why we had to have this theme when I came back, because I'm feeling a little neglected and deprived from that wonderful experience of the South. Anyway, I'm making caramelized onions here, and the thing about caramelized onions is they're really simple to make, but you have to have patience. So what you want to do is you want to have a pan with high sides. It doesn't have to be this high, but high sides. And you want to put butter or clarified butter in that pan, and that's the medium that the onions are going to cook in. And then you don't want to add all your onions at once. You want to give them room, so that you don't want them to steam. That's something that's really important. You don't want them to steam, you want them to cook. And so you add a little bit, a couple onions at a time, and let them get started, and then you can start to add more. And you can see that they are taking on a little color, right? And it'll probably take, again, to caramelize them for a burger, you really want them dark, right? So hopefully we'll have enough time to get them that dark in our little time slot here. But we can always cook them a little bit longer when we're off the air. But the bottom line is that when you actually cut an onion for caramelizing them, to cut them properly, you slice them in half from the root end, and then you take and essentially V out that root end, okay? And then you just slice them very thinly back to that root end, because then you get these nice little slices and everything's pretty uniform, and they break up really nicely, into the pot, right? So it's really nice, and they'll turn out really good. I don't know about you, but I love caramelized onions, and they're just one of the most delicious things, and there's never enough of them. Has anybody ever noticed that, right? There's never enough of them. Since we're close to Chicago, I wanted to just give you a little bit of insight into some places that we were at recently that you might want to try to put on your agenda for a next trip to Chicago, because there's such good eating in Chicago. Now, one thing that I want to just mention, which I think is interesting, is that Chicago is not a vegetarian-friendly city for the most part, at least I should say in what I've found. And the reason that's important to me and it may not be important to you, is because my wife's vegetarian, and so we always have to look for something that might work, for her also. So it's something that you have to kind of look at. It's not to say that there aren't usually dishes available on menus, but there's usually one dish, or something like that. So it's something that you have to spend a little bit extra time for. But one of the places we really wanted to try, because those of you who know Matt Steigerwald at Rapid Creek Cidery, Matt's favorite restaurant right now in Chicago is Parachute. It's like a Korean-American restaurant, and it's a one-star Michelin restaurant that actually has reasonable pricing, so you can go have a very interesting dinner for a reasonable price and say that you're at a one-star Michelin restaurant. And so we went there, and it's really interesting because I think that I would say we were probably the crowd that's attracted to Parachute for the most part is about 35 years younger than we are. And so it's a very hopping type of place. And we sat at the bar because that's where we were instructed is the best place to sit, and it was the best place to sit, to see as much as possible what was going on. Because part of the preparation of the meal is done, some of the dishes are prepared right behind the bar. And this is a kitchen bar, it's not an actual drinking bar. So part of the dishes are prepared there, and then the rest of the dishes are prepared right next to it, so you can kind of peek and see things that are going on in there. They were pretty busy. But as those of you know who listen to the show or have watched the show, those are my ideal places where you can actually see what's happening, see people who are preparing your food. And it was really a great evening, so I highly recommend it. And they were so kind, they actually starred, kind of like highlighted the items that were vegetarian on the menu so that my wife knew exactly what she could eat. And that's why it's important to remember that dining is a two-way experience. The restaurant wants you to understand that. It's not a one-way experience where you go and you just expect them to do things for you. You need to participate because that's what they really want. And so you need to make your desires clear. Ahead of time is better than, on the spot if possible. But it was really terrific. And so she had, you'll like some of the stuff. It's interesting. Cauliflower with seaweeds and Parmesan. And when you hear that, it's kind of like, what?
Was it all roasted? Was it roasted?
Yeah, it was outrageous. And I had sea bass with leeks and grilled bone fumet. and it was really good. And we had some other things too that were absolutely wonderful. So that's something that I would recommend. Check it out if you're in Chicago. Parachute. So anyway, you see my onions they're starting to move along here, which is really nice, right? Very, very nice. So then there's another cool place I want to talk to you about. Chia Chai, Chiya, and this guy is from Nepal, and his family has an organic tea plantation in Nepal, and so their black tea is actually really good, and it's from his family's plantation. But what's really cool about that place is they actually have really interesting takes on Indian food. It's definitely different than what you would normally find. But what I really loved was that they have all kinds of different chais, and they have chai flights, which was really fun. We had a chai flight, and they have really some crazy chais too. So it's a lot of fun if you like chai. I would suggest that you go there. And all Chia Chai is in the Logan Square area. There's a lot of great restaurants in Logan Square, including Lula Cafe, which was one of the first, if not the first, farm-to-table restaurant in Chicago many, many, many years ago. And we hadn't been there since we had a farm dinner there, I don't know, a long time ago. And we went for breakfast, lunch while we were there last week. And it was terrific. Still a fantastic place to get really great home-baked food and home-cooked food and fresh baked goods.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, you may, of course.
So if you saw me, I rolled out the biscuit dough, and I actually had to add a little bit more flour to it because it was a little bit too wet. So I just added as I went until I got the consistency that I wanted. And then I cut them out with our flour cookie cutter. Because it's springtime, we need flowers in our life. So now the oven is preheated to 450 degrees, and they're gonna bake for 12 minutes.
What else? Do you have other things you want to tell people right now?
No, go ahead.
You sure?
Yep.
So, as I said, we're gonna have burgers, and I'm cheating. I'm not making real aioli, but I'm using Veggie is a pretty decent substitute for mayonnaise if you're not into eggs or genetically modified soy or things like that. And this is the one made with grapeseed oil, which I think is the best tasting one of all of their versions that
That's what we use.
offer. You like that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And even if you do like to eat meat or eggs, that's still the best.
It is pretty good, actually. Yeah, it is pretty good. This one is not, but the grapeseed oil is. The question was, is it organic? And this is. It's not, but it's non. Yeah, it's non-genetically modified ingredients, so it's not bad. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to add a little pimenton. Do you know what pimenton is? Pimenton is roasted red peppers from Spain. And it comes in two different styles, sweet and hot. This is hot. So we'll try to be a little, just a little bit more. It'll be fine, don't worry. There's a lot of volume of the mayo in there, don't worry, it's fine. So, oh yeah, good, that's a good idea. We can move Bubby's out of here. So that'll be just some aioli that we can use with our burgers. And we've got our caramelized onions, of course. And in addition to that, you can try the pickles that it's a quick pickle. This isn't a kind of pickle, that you can keep forever because it's not actually been done in a sterilized jar or any of that kind of stuff. So it'll last at least a week in the fridge, probably longer than that. And the cool thing about these pickles, I never really liked quick pickles that much because of the vinegar. I'm not really I like vinegars, but I like really good vinegars. In general, a lot of pickles are made with just kind of a regular distilled vinegar. And then Kathy Dubois, who many of you know, and of course she was the co-host in the show for many years, we were just at her home and she was making these quick pickles, and she told me that the secret is that you use rice vinegar instead of distilled white vinegar. So these are it's really simple. You just cut up like a red onion and put it in some boiling water for maybe a minute or something like that, and then take it out and put it into essentially whatever container you're going to use, half water, half rice vinegar, and then whatever kind of spices you want. In this, there's bay leaves and pepper, but you could put other things too. You could add fresh dill, whatever, that type of thing. So that's the pickle, and it's very quick and easy. Now I wanted to show you that we're starting to get a little bit of caramelization, not only on the onions themselves, but also on the bottom of the pan. Now you could use different things. I don't have any white wine. I'd probably like to have white wine to deglaze it with, but we'll be using water because I don't have any white wine here. But that would be a really nice thing to deglaze it with. So eventually you're going to want to deglaze that before it burns. The main thing is you really want to be careful and you don't want those onions to burn. You do want them to get dark, without a doubt. You want them to get very dark, but you definitely don't want them to burn. So the last thing about Chicago I want to mention to you, because a lot of people who fly have to go through Chicago, through O'Hare, to get anywhere if you're in the Midwest. And you've heard me talk about this before, but what always saves us if we're there is Tortas Fronteras at the airport. That's one of Rick Bayless's restaurants, and has anybody been there? Tortas Fronteras, okay. So there's plenty of good things to eat there, and.
But which wing is that in?
I think they have 3 places. So basically anywhere you're in O'Hare, you can find one. Can I use this? Yeah. Excellent. So, and there's plenty to eat, all kinds of different foods. B concourse is one, and K3 is another.
Say the name again.
Tortas Fronteras, and so it's a great lifesaver if you're at O'Hare and get hungry. You don't have to tortas, Tortas, like bread, like sandwich. And there's another place that I will not. I don't like to mention things that are negative. So there's another place that it's really expensive. So if you see a place that's really expensive and it's a very famous place in Chicago in terms of restaurant, don't eat there. Yeah, definitely not. They don't even use. It's okay. We're not going to get into it. Anyway, it's just don't eat there.
Oh, these strawberries smell yummy.
So what did you do to the strawberries? Did you tell us yet? You macerated them, or you are macerating them, right?
Where's my tool? I cut them and I smashed them with this.
That's a potato masher.
It is, but it works wonderfully on strawberries.
And why did you mash them? I was wondering about that.
I've always done it that way. I like to have it a little bit more juicy.
Ah, okay.
Like syrupy almost.
So the thing to remember though, if you're going to do that, don't do it far ahead of time, because otherwise you're going to end up with just goo, basically, right?
So they need to sit out and get to room temperature a little bit to make them even juicier and tastier. So I cut them in half and then I mashed them right before you guys all got here, or some of you probably saw me doing it.
Did you add maple syrup?
I didn't add anything to it. I actually, my strawberry shortcake I don't make with a lot of sugar. I add usually a sweetener to the whipped cream. And there's usually enough sugar in the strawberries, unless they're really tart, but these are good. And then I don't add sugar to the biscuits either.
So I'm going to start heating up our burgers. I might get this clarified butter off of here eventually. And these burgers are for a home preparation, I think they're the best I've ever eaten over the years in terms of a vegetarian burger. So I highly recommend. People are always saying, oh, do you have a recipe? So I'm going to give you the recipe. It's really simple. So it's something that you can just remember because it's so easy. And that is that you use 1 cup of Lundberg's organic wild rice mix. And then you use 1 cup of extra sharp, some kind of sharp cheddar cheese. And you use 1 cup of pecans, chopped pecans. So everything is like 1 cup. And that 1 cup of wild rice mix, of course, makes 2 cups, right, of wild rice. And then it's really easy to put this together because what you're doing is you're cooking the wild rice and you're grating all the cheese. So you've got the wild rice cooking, it takes about 45 minutes. And when it's done, it has to sit for about 10 minutes. Taste it to make sure that it's really done. Otherwise, you might have to add a little bit more water and cook it for a little while longer. But In the meantime, you've put into your bowl the chopped pecans and the grated cheese. And so what happens is you then add the wild rice mix, which, because it's hot, it melts the cheese and makes it stick together really easily. And then you just form the hardest part. The absolute hardest part about this is forming the patties, because you get all that stuff just gets all over your hands, and it's just so hard to do. So you have to have a lot of patience and just do it easily. And you could, well, why don't you wear plastic gloves? Because that could, do it. Well, some of you may have noticed an article that came out in Mother Jones. If you haven't noticed it, you might want to take a look at it, which came out last week, and was talking about a study that was just done showing that people who eat out often have 35% more phtalates, if I pronounced that correctly, in their blood, that's plastics, than people who eat at home. So it's something you might want to be a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with, there could be all kinds of different reasons. Food's all stored in plastic. A lot of places require cooks to wear plastic gloves, so all the food is, got a lot of plastic. So there's all kinds of different reasons, but I prefer touching everything with my hands if at all possible. It's just a nicer way to, I think, a nicer way to cook, and it makes you closer to your food. So it might take a little bit longer to get those burgers formed, but it works out all right. You could probably try putting some oil on your hand. That might work. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but it's possible.
So
how's that? How you doing with those muscles?
Yeah, it's great. I forgot my mixer, so we're hand whipping the cream.
No, I didn't want you to bring a mixer.
Oh, well, I did. So I pulled, if you notice, I had the bowl and the whisk in the refrigerator, because if you use a cold bowl and whisk, it will whip faster. So then not. I put a whole quart in here, and as you can see, it's starting to get thicker. And I will just continue doing that, and we will add some maple syrup to sweeten this. I don't know how much you think I should add.
I wouldn't add very much, just a little bit. You can always add a little bit more. You can taste it and see how it goes. I think that's always a good thing, is to, just less is more in that circumstance, and then you can add if you need to. Yes.
The Lundberg's wild rice mix, does that have like a seasoning that's in it?
No, there's no seasoning in it. The question was, does the Lundberg's wild rice mix have a seasoning that's in it? And the answer is no. It's just a number of different types of rice, including wild rice, that are in there. And if you want it to be more fully flavored, I'd cook it in a broth, whether that's a vegetable broth or a meat broth, whatever you want. And if you don't have any broth on hand, then what I did was I just cooked it in a little bit to the water. I added 2 tablespoons of butter for the amount of rice that I had. So that, of course, gives it some flavor, and a little salt is always important. By the way, if you want to try something really interesting, so in Sarasota, how many of you know who Marcella Hazan was? Anybody know who Marcella Hazan was? So Marcella Hazan, you can think of her this way. She was to Italian cooking what Julia Child was to French cooking. So she was the ambassador of Italian cooking in the United States, and she wrote a number of cookbooks, but her classic book is the Essentials of Italian Cooking. I think we maybe need to look it up. I can't remember. The Essentials of Classic Italian Cooking, something like that. It's a fantastic book, and something that everyone should have in their library if they're interested in good Italian food. And her son, Giuliano, is also a cookbook author and a chef and a teacher, and he lives in Sarasota. So Rachel and I went over to his house and talked with him, and that interview will air sometime probably late April, as soon as Fairfield Media Center and I figure out how we're doing this. But it was great talking with him, and one of the things that we did during the time we were there was we tasted a couple of different salts. And I don't know what you use at home, but we use really great salts at our house, all kinds of different sea salts from different places. And what he wanted to show me was that no matter what kind of sea salt you get, it still may not be really great. So you don't have to go as far as tasting a Morton salt versus a really good sea salt. But he actually gave us a sea salt to taste alongside of this beautiful sea salt from, let's see now, where was this? Was it from Sardinia? No, I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was called the Salt of the Popes. And we asked him, why was it called the Salt of the Popes? And he said, because the popes used to keep it all for themselves. So that's why it was called the Salt of the Popes. And anyway, try it sometime. Just do a salt tasting on your own. It was an incredible revelation, because the sea salt that we tasted, really, it was just absolutely awful. It was a major brand that anyone could get anywhere. And we tasted it, and then we tasted the other salt, the Salt of the Popes, and it was just like night and day. And so salt is really a very important ingredient, obviously, to bring out flavor. And one of the things that I learned from Giuliano, which I was very thankful to learn from him, was that the judicious use of salt should be so delicate that, you are using it just to bring out the flavor of the items and not to taste the salt. And I thought that was really good, because I think I tend to maybe go overboard a little bit, because I just love the taste of salt. So anyway, that was a great thing. Yes.
The name of a cookbook?
Yes.
Essentials of Classic Italian.
Essentials of Classic Italian Cooking, Marcello Hazan. In the 50s, I think, wasn't it, or 60s? We'll see if we can find that out. But he has a number of books too that are really, really, really good. One about I think it's the Classic Pasta Cookbook. And one of the things that's wonderful about it is that it has illustrations of all these different shapes, which are fantastic. And so it's a lot of fun. So it was great to talk with him, and a lot of insights into Italian cooking. And you can look forward to that later. Not whipping? Why would that be? Well, we'll have to see what happens. Just keep at it. Yes, Nancy.
Put it in the freezer for a minute.
Yes.
And how does that compare with what you like?
It's different. I like the reason that I use that Celtic sea salt a lot, the Eden brand, is simply because I trust Eden. It's a very trustworthy brand. I believe it was founded by George Osawa, that brand, many, many years ago, and I think that the company has a lot of integrity. So it's nice if you know of a company that has a lot of integrity and you can support their brand. And so it's a nice everyday salt. It's not too salty. That's another thing, is you have to get to know how strong a salt taste the salt is that you use, because every single salt varies. So you can't just add salt. If you go somewhere to cook somebody's house and they have a different kind of salt than you have, you need to taste that first. That's really critical, because otherwise you don't know what might happen. I keep hearing all these bells ringing. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It's good.
Good.
They're not done yet.
Okay, excellent. So, one of the things, yes.
Another question on the salt. What is it, fine grain, or what's the?
I use a fine grain. The question was about the type of salt. I use the fine grain for regular seasoning as you're cooking, that kind of thing, or you're putting it in the pasta water or whatever. And then, depending on the dish, sometimes I'll use a coarse grain for a finishing salt. It just depends what it is. Some dishes don't. Obviously, you're not going to do that to every dish, but depending upon what it is, you might use a coarser grain.
Do you always cook with clarified butter, or? Do
I always cook with clarified butter, was the question. I cook a lot with clarified butter because
Some cooks, they cook with canola or
Yeah.
because it doesn't have a taste of its own.
I'm really glad. The question was, do I cook with clarified butter a lot? These are getting really pretty. They still got a ways to go. But those look nice. Wow. We'll talk about those in a second. Anyway, I cook with clarified butter, and John was saying a lot of cooks use canola oil because it doesn't have any taste, so it's a neutral oil. And this is the case, especially in restaurants. There's another reason too. It's very inexpensive. So that's one of the reasons it's used a lot. I never use canola oil. I don't like canola oil. I think that it's I just don't use it. And well, 90% of canola oil is genetically modified, but there's still plenty. You can still get organic canola oil, but I don't use it. I just don't think that it adds. If I'm going to use something, an element in my cooking, an ingredient, I want it to add something to what I'm doing. I want it to have some purpose other than just being a vehicle. It's kind of funny, grapeseed oil is another thing like that, where a lot of chefs will use grapeseed oil because it doesn't have any taste, but that's not really great. That's refined grapeseed oil. What do you think grapeseed oil tastes like? Who said that? Some brilliant people, right? It tastes like grapes. As a matter of fact, one of the most astounding taste experiences I ever had was at a food show in Nuremberg, Germany, and this guy had this grapeseed oil. It was these white grapes from Germany, and I put it, I took a taste of this, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was just like this essence of grape. It was beautiful. But grapeseed oil is also used because it has a high smoke point. So.
And olive oil is not, is that okay to use too?
Yeah, olive oil is a great general purpose oil. I mean, it's really, really, really good. I would use olive oil on medium to low heat, not for really high heat. Though a lot of people fry with olive oil, and there's a lot of conflicting information as to whether there's anything wrong with that. I think it's really difficult to get reliable information because you've probably got the Olive Oil Association saying one thing and you've got other people saying another. But I think that if you're going to use, you can use. There are other oils that tolerate heat really well that you can use. Coconut oil is one oil that tolerates heat well. That's true, and so I use it. Clarified butter does have a higher smoke point, and so I like to use it. And I just like the flavor. It adds a lot of flavor. And yes.
I was just going to say you can't use olive oil for baking cakes.
You can. Olive oil cake, sure.
If it's a specific olive oil.
Yeah, you can't, you have to be careful how you would use olive oil baking, but you can definitely use it.
I'm smiling because you don't remember when I made Rachel's birthday cake with olive oil, and it was a carrot cake.
Oh, really? Was it?
It was a long time. I was like one of my first baking experiences.
Was it not good or what?
It was not great.
Okay, that's all right. We won't remind you of it. It's all right. You were 13. Well, that's quite all right. Absolutely okay. Rapeseed. Rapeseed is canola. It's canola. Yeah. 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 There's a whole story behind. Canola is Canadian Oil Company or something, Canadian Oil something or other. I don't know what it is. There's a whole story behind how that industry became huge, which is really fascinating. You can look it up if you have any interest in it. But I prefer not to use canola oil. That's all. I just love to use other types of oils. So, yeah, the flowering plant is really pretty, right? Yeah. All right, so I want to also, I'm going to have to turn up these burgers. They need to turn up. Oh, the burgers, yeah, I'll go over it really quickly again. So, Lumberg organic wild rice mix, 1 cup, 1 dry cup, all right? And then just follow instructions as to how to cook it. 1 cup of walnuts, pecans. You can use walnuts, pecans. I would toast them if you have time. That would be really great. I didn't do it, but I mean, if you have time, I'd do it. 1 cup of shredded sharp cheese. This was shredded organic raw cheddar. And then I forgot a couple of things. Some chili powder, and I do this to taste. Chili powder, and you could either use the pimenton or this particular time I used, what did I use? I used, I think I used a smoked paprika, but now I can't remember if I did that but I used something else. Oh, I used chipotle powder. So again, to taste. So you can, as you mix it, after you mix it up, you can taste it. And one of the things you should remember is it's probably gonna get a little stronger. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. You don't want to frighten people who take a bite and have to start coughing and everything like that, right? Unless you have a lot of people who love love very, very spicy food. All right, so, and then then you put them in the freezer. So you form them into patties, put them in the freezer, let them freeze, and then you can bag them up. And then it's really easy just to take them out. But you have to do that, otherwise they'll just crumble and fall apart. And then you may have to, as you're cooking, you may have to be very careful as they're cooking to make sure you don't turn them too early, because otherwise they will fall apart. So that's something that you have to be really careful about. So make sure that you spend the time doing that to get them to turn. Wait till they're ready to turn. So a couple of other things that I want. Oh, did you have something you want to say? Okay. So a couple of other things I wanted to pass along, which just were reinforced a lot by this trip, and that is that we got the opportunity to meet not only Giuliano, but we got to meet James Bocharski, who's a baker in Sarasota, Jim's Small Batch Bakery. Got to meet the pastry chef and co-owner of another restaurant called Leela. Met for the second time the chef and owner of a restaurant called Sardinia. And why I'm mentioning all this is that all these guys share one thing in common, and that is that they're the ones that are making your food. When you go to these places, when you go to Jim's Small Batch Bakery, he's baking everything. He's handling everything. When you go to Sardinia, Nino's making everything. When you eat the baked goods at Leela, it's the same thing. And so people say, well, how do you find good restaurants? What do you use? And people, I use Yelp, I use this, I use that. Now, I don't use any of those things. I want to go somewhere where I know who's handling my food. And so I'm seeking out places where I can find the person who's doing it, and I can somehow strike up, even if it's not an intimate relationship, it's some type of relationship where I can see what's happening, which is why I like restaurants where they have open kitchens, because then you can really see what's going on, and you can see how the staff has been trained to cook your food, and the experience becomes either something that you really want to continue with, or it's something that you don't go back to. Anyway, all these guys have, I want to say that what exemplified the characteristics of all of these people was one experience, and that was walking into the kitchen at Sardinia just after dinner rush, and there were still quite a few people in the restaurant, not that large a restaurant, but there were still quite a few people, but the waiter said, no, he wants to see you. He likes people to come back and look, and talk to him, everything. And we had met him like 4 years ago, I think. But obviously he's not going to remember us. But we remember being in the kitchen and seeing his beautiful oven and everything. Anyway, we walked in there, and again, you have to just remember this, right after dinner rush, right? And he doesn't have this huge staff of people. He's got a dishwasher, he's got somebody preparing salads, and he's doing everything else. And this guy is glowing. He is just glowing, beautiful glow. He's doing exactly what he wants to do. He's right where he wants to be. And this is the person who's making your food, right? So this is the key to finding a great place to eat. It's finding people who are making that food that are right where they want to be. They're doing exactly what they want to be doing at that moment. And the only focus they have is pleasing you and making something that's really, really well crafted with love. And if you find that, then you're going to be nourished when you go out to eat. Because I think we can all think, and I certainly can think of a lot of experiences just this past weekend, where what you eat, and it may taste good, but there's a different quality of feeling when you're finished eating. And it's just like I was reading an interview today. Any of you know the chef, I'm gonna forget his name right now off the top of my head, but he has Husk and McCrady's in Charleston, South Carolina. He's a very famous chef. But maybe somebody will look it up for me right now so I don't seem like too much of a fool. And you can just yell out his name. But anyway, he had a drinking problem, and he's been sober for a year now. And so this interview was very telling because he's making food differently. He's talking about how he's making food differently than he was making it before. And he said that he has no interest in making food that people are going to fall asleep for 4 hours after they eat his food. That's not what he wants. He wants people to feel good after they eat his food. And that's just, I mean, of course, any chef really wants that to happen. You know, they want that to be the case. But this guy is, Sean Brock is his name. And he's really taking it to heart that he's changing the way he's cooking based on maybe a different understanding of what he's doing and what he wants to do in the kitchen and the objectives that he's looking for. So it was very, you can look up that interview. It was really very interesting to read about his awakening, we'll say, in the kitchen. All right, so everything good?
Everything is good. The whipped cream is not whipping, or the cream is not whipping very well.
So that's weird, huh? I wonder why that's the case.
I thought I'd.
Uh-oh, we better not mention that. You know, I remember that. Yeah, somebody is mentioning that they've had the same experience at this time of season, right, with that cream, and I remember it now too. And I'm not a scientist, food scientist, so I don't know the reason, but that could be. I think it sounds good, so let's just say, oh, really, there's not much we can do, because Dory was saying that she's even whipped it on high and still doesn't, but the cows are busy. They have their attention on some other things probably, right?
They're procreating.
Right. Yeah, the babies are coming, and they just, they're not thinking as they're giving their milk and their cream that, hey, this needs to be a certain way so that everybody can whip it at home properly, right? But anyway, it's going to be good, huh? What temperature do I have which on? The burgers are on 7 right now. So this is an electric stove, so they're on 7, and I'll probably turn them down to 6. I might put 9, goes up to 9. I'll probably turn them down to 5. So I'm going to see what they look like underneath, but I wanted to get going so you guys didn't riot afterwards, because there wasn't anything to eat at all here. So I want to also just mention a couple of other things, because Christi, I was hoping you might share some insight, because there's this ongoing question that a lot of people have. I read a lot of articles about it, because Christi has 2 teenagers, and a husband, and you both work, and you do a significant, not all the time, but a significant part of your shopping at Costco.
That is true.
Right, and I have read so many different articles lately about Costco. Is it worth it to go to Costco? Do you end up spending more money because you go to Costco because you have to buy so much stuff? So I think that you can really help us. You can shed some light on this whole Costco situation right now. Is it worthwhile to go to Costco when you have a voracious family?
I didn't know you were going to ask me that, Stephen.
Well, you can take your time if you want.
So
Costco does have a lot of organic products, which people appreciate.
We buy a lot of things from Costco. We get a lot of our organic chicken, and a lot of vegetables. They've got great deals on avocados. We eat avocados like crazy. So when we go, I try to avoid buying bulk snacks.
Do you go with a list?
Mental list.
Mental list, okay.
Yeah. If we buy bulk snacks, my kids will have them gone in a day or 2. I mean, it just seems they disappear. So we try to do the basics, a lot of the vegetables, frozen vegetables, chicken. We get organic ground beef there too sometimes. And I'm trying to think. We get a bunch of stuff, but I just can't.
But that's all right. But you find that it's worthwhile to go there, because a lot of people. I think there's 2 camps. There's the camp of we go to Costco and we spend way too much money because we can't pass up the deals, and then there's the camp that we go to Costco and we save a whole lot of money because we eat we can stock up on the foods, and they're higher quality, and very reasonable prices. So,
We're in the second.
all right, you're in that Costco camp. Okay, I didn't know if that was a question that was bothering anybody else here or not, or if I'm just the only one who is bothered by that question, but it has been something that's been on my mind. I wanted to ask you. So,
Shop at Costco?
no, I don't shop at Costco, but I read food articles every day. And I'm really fascinated as to how many. There's like there's more than. Food articles fall into different categories. One is 2/3 of them are about diets, and that can be. It doesn't have to be about a specific type of diet, but it can also be about nutrition, whatever. So 2/3 of the food articles that are written are about diets, and then it seems like the other third are about Trader Joe's or Costco. So, the 15 foods you must buy at Trader Joe's, the 20 foods not to miss at Trader Joe's. The best deals. I know it's just funny it's actually funny to spend a lot of time looking through.
That's what I wondered.
What do you say about Trader Joe's?
Is Trader Joe's just a marketing?
Trader Joe's is Trader Joe's for me is I really enjoy going to Trader Joe's. Rachel, my wife, just cannot stand that I go there because she doesn't find it to be interesting at all. But I like to go because they constantly have different stuff on the shelves. And the truth is that most, oh, I said I didn't like to, okay, let me see. Let me think about this. There are a few things that I've found at Trader Joe's that are really good. They're almond butter. They have several kinds of almond butter, very reasonable, and it's good, right? But my opinion is that better to have the opportunity to taste before you buy, if it's at all possible, with most things there. That would be my analysis. Let's put it that way. The ricotta cheese is good. We have a fan of their ricotta cheese, so that's good. But in general, I think that it's more fun for me just to look around and see all the stuff that's there. Yeah. That reminds me. It was so funny. It was. I also wanted to mention that there's a place that we go in Sarasota. We're tea drinkers, but we like really good coffee. And there's a place in Sarasota called Perk, which is quite extraordinary. And if you go there, you're just like you're dead then after that, because then you can't go in any other place that to have coffee, because these guys are so amazing. Yeah, you're totally spoiled. You're completely spoiled. And I have yet to run, not that I've been everywhere where people make coffee, but I've been to some pretty good places, and it's just not the same as these guys. They're just the geekiest people, and they're also really fun to be with. PERQ, they're really, 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 really good. And is everything okay? Because I keep hearing that tone all the time. What's going on? Is it something exciting? Oh, you have more things in the oven.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it. I didn't understand what exactly was happening. Okay.
Can you bake those burgers versus?
You could bake the burgers. Yes, the question was, could you bake the burgers? And yes, you could bake them. I don't do it because I just happen to like fat. But I would just bake them at 350, till you can see the cheese. You can see, you can just look at them and you can see that they're done. They get a little brown, and they're really nice. But I would take that extra step if you have the time and toast the nuts. I think it'd be really good. You'll see whether you like it or not. If you like them, then you can whip them up pretty easily. It's very simple to do. So, any other questions? It's been fun. Use for toasting the nuts? I just put them in a pan. Yeah, dry roast them in a pan. But don't walk away. Because you'll burn them. When you start to smell the oils and they start to, smell, then you're about there. And also, shake that, turn them, shake them, make it work, right?
Toasted pecans would actually be really fabulous on strawberry shortcake.
Yeah, toasted pecans. Oh, yeah, that would be good on
I
strawberry.
love them on strawberry sundaes.
Right. So stay tuned. We're not sure if Jason's anniversary is May 1st. My wife's birthday is May 1st. That's the next first Tuesday. So we're looking to try to move it to May 2nd, which is Wednesday, so that neither of us gets into trouble. And that's what we're going to shoot for. So Mary Adam is supposed to be our guest there, but she's thinking it's May 1st right now, so we'll see what happens at that point. But it'll be fun, whatever it is. We'll have a good time, and we'll cook up some good stuff. And thank you all for all of your questions. They were great. Mary Adam, she's, if you know her, she's a terrific home cook, just fantastic. And you can find her at the at-home store at times. And she's been there for many, many years. So here's what they're looking like right now. Looking pretty good. They're still not there, but they're going to be good. They're going to be really good. And we hope you enjoy them. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure to share this 60 minutes with you. And we want to thank again everybody's Whole Foods, Green Building Supply, and of course Fairfield Media Center. I'm Steve Boss. This is Christi Welsh. And you've been watching Great Taste, 60 minutes of delicious tastes once a month on Fairfield Media Center, first Tuesday of every month from Green Building Supply.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.